Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Swedish on the home side, half English on the away side, and both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel before, albeit the Swedish brewery quite a little bit more than the English one, and the English brewery has never featured in a solo brewery beer review. The last beer we did from those guys, and the only beer thus far, was actually part of a collaboration beer as well. So we'll need to see about sorting that at some point in the near future. But the beer we're going to have a look at today was quite a random find for me here in Hong Kong, but a very welcome one at that. And it's a beer style that I do very much enjoy, one that I know both of these breweries can do very, very well, but it's got a little bit of a twist to it that I don't think I've had from either of these breweries before, come to think of it. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for the home side of things then, we are going to return to my second motherland of Sweden. We're going to go to my home county of Skåne in the very south of the country, and we're going to a little place called Arlöv, which is about halfway between Lund to the northeast and Malmö to the southwest. And that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Nerd Brewing, and this one is brewed in collaboration with Emperor's Brewery, who are from a little place called Ashby in Leicestershire in England. But this particular beer is called Brute Force. It comes in at 13.3% ABV. It's an Imperial Stout, of course, which you would expect from both of these breweries, but this one contains dark forest honey and toasted coconut. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. At 13.3% as well, I think this is one of the bigger ones that we've had that hasn't been barrel aged from Nerd Brewing as well. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. The last review that I did involving Emperor's Brewery was a collaboration with Loch Lomond Brewery, and that was really, really very nice. But yeah, we've had many beers from the wonderful Nerd Brewing on the channel over the years, but I need to get a few of Emperor's own beers to review at some stage as well. But yeah, this is one of the first beers that I actually bought here in Hong Kong, but I didn't get round to reviewing it yet. But I just felt in the mood for this one and thought, why not? So here we are. Let's crack on with this one then and see how we got on. The Brute Force, a 13.3% honey and coconut Imperial Stout from Nerd Brewing in Arlöv, Skåne, Sweden, and in collaboration with Emperor's Brewery from Ashby, Leicestershire, England. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved in this one before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done involving both Nerd Brewing, and another link for the ones involving Emperor's Brewery. And we will no doubt add more to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist and the English playlist since it's dual nationality. And remember, you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. So I do recommend that you do that. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the breweries. We'll start off with Nerd Brewing in the first case, since they are the home brewery. So yeah, Nerd Brewing find their roots in the city of Malmö in Skåne in the very south of Sweden, and the company was founded originally by Hannes Gruber and Karin Karlsson back in 2015 when they had their premiere at the Malmö Öl and Whiskey Festival. Both were basically big beer enthusiasts, and they wanted to kind of break into the industry. But Hannes had been a home brewer for a long time, and he got some very good feedback on his beers, and it was this that inspired him to turn professional. And he comes from a background in software development and takes care of the brewing side of things, whereas Karin was an entrepreneur and a trader within the IT industry, and she was managing the business side of the brewery, although she is no longer part of the company. But they started up with a very modest production but they became the most highly rated brewery in Sweden according to Untappd. I'm not sure if they still hold that accolade, but they certainly held it for a very long time actually. But the brewery were initially based in the Lilla Ölfabriken Chad beer facility in Rosengård, Malmö, and they brewed a couple of their beers at South Plains Brewery next door as well. But the company officially joined with Chad Beer and Lilla Ölfabriken to form a collective, but they continue to sell the beer under their own brands. But Nerd Brewing, of course, mainly focus on Imperial Stouts, but over the years they have released 1 or 2 IPAs. There's been a couple of barley wines as well, and 1 or 2 other things. But yeah. In the very early days of this company, though, it was very difficult to actually find their beers other than at a few festivals around Sweden, because I think they were basically exporting most of their stuff over to Denmark. But since 2018, they started selling their beers again in Systembolaget, and then over the next few years they continued to grow their sales. But in March of 2021, they formed a new collective called Molecule, and this includes Elm 11, Nerd and Chad beer, and they opened up a new brewery in Arlöv, which started off with a 1,500 litre brew kit. Over the years they've continued to grow the capacity of this brewery by adding new fermentation tanks and things like that, and in late 2022 they had their first brew pub day, and they're hoping that they can do this more regularly, and they have been doing it fairly regularly over the last few years from what I understand. But as it stands, Molecule Brewing consists of the 3 bands, and Nerd Brewing is the one that's releasing, the Imperial Stouts, the barley wines, and the big malty stuff basically. Elm 11 are the ones who are producing the kind of big juicy fruity sour beers, whereas the Chad beer brand is being used to release lagers and IPAs and stuff like this. But it's Anders who is the main man behind the brewing for Molecule, and he of course is the founder of the Elm 11 brand out of the 3. So as of May 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 135 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said, Nerd Brewing is best known for the big Imperial Stout. So if that's your jam, then this is one of the Swedish breweries that you definitely want to check out. So I think that's everything we can say about Nerd Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So let's leave it at that for Nerd Brewing, and we'll go on to the English side of things then. So Emperor's Brewery. As I mentioned to you earlier, this brewery are based near Ashby, but the little village that they're actually based in is called Newbold Collierton, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's kind of between Derby and Leicester in Leicestershire in England, kind of in the middle part over to the west a little bit. But the brewery itself was founded back in 2017 by Damien Doherty, who had been homebrewing on and off for about 20 years. But apparently he was inspired to go commercial by his friend Mark Williamson, who founded Linear Brewing using a very small homebrewing kit. But Damien is of course a big fan of Star Wars, and this is where the brewery takes its name from, Emperor's Brewery. But he started off using a very small 20 litre brewing kit, and this was the reason that he did so many collaboration brews during his early days. Apparently he sold his beers exclusively through Hoptimism for a while, but then in 2020 he bought a 1,000 litre fermenter, and this was installed at Bang the Elephant Brewery in Nottingham, which is where he brews a number of his beers today. But they produce mainly Imperial Stouts and Porters, but they have done the odd barley wine and quadruple over the years as well. But as of May 2024, they've produced 55 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But still a very small operation, but a very well regarded English brewery these days, and they have been getting their name out there a little bit more across Europe. Their beers are quite highly sought after, of course, and I'm pretty sure that I do actually have one of their beers, one of their own beers to review when I go back to the motherland of Scotland. So keep your eyes peeled for that when I make it back home in summer 2025. So that is everything I can really tell you about Emperor's Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, again, you can check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done as well. But that's everything in terms of brewery histories. Let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty similar to what we've seen from Nerd Brewing before. One of the other things I should mention about Nerd Brewing, which I forgot, I usually remember when we do breweries, beer reviews from them. Nerd Brewing like to call themselves open source brewing, so they always put their recipes up on the website. So probably you can find the recipe for this beer on the Nerd Brewing website. But the artwork on this one is very, very similar. If we shift the beer around like this, if we move the waxy thing out of the way, you can see the Nerd Brewing and Emperor's Brewing symbol. We just pull that up a little bit, there you go. But yeah, nicely presented. This one's slightly different. You know, I say it's similar, but you know, the background is a bit different. You can see it's got a little bit of a kind of space theme under there, whereas usually it's binary numbers, if I remember rightly, from Nerd Brewing. But you can see the beer has this lovely kind of blue wax top on it. I did slice underneath the bottle, the lid of the bottle, of course, just so that it's easier to open on the video. But like we said earlier, this one comes in at 13.3% ABV, and it's an Imperial Stout with dark forest honey and toasted coconut. So yeah, 13.3% ABV. Like I say, this is one of the heavier beers that I've had from Nerd Brewing that hasn't been barrel aged actually. So yeah, this one was produced in 2022. So I think I can't remember when I came across this one in Hong Kong, but it was one of the first beers I bought. I'm pretty sure I got this one at Angry Beer in Mongkok actually, which is a lovely little beer shop in this kind of little market place. I do recommend you check it out if you find yourself in Hong Kong. But let's get this guy out into the glass and we'll see what the beer is all about. But that's a fairly clean cut that I got with my Swiss Army knife, so quite happy with that. But a little bit of smoke on the opening as we open this one up. But let's get the beer out into the glass and we'll see what it's all about. There we are. That looks pretty awesome, I have to say. So, a little bit of sediment left in the bottom of the bottle here, but always going to happen with a Nerd Brewing beer. So before the head disappears, you can see that this one poured with about a 1/3, 1/4 finger of a frothy, I would say very kind of dark tan head there, but it looks quite nice. If I let the camera just focus on that, I'm not sure if it will. We'll just let it do that. But yeah, you can see that the bubbles on this one, they're kind of medium sized on the surface, but it does get a little bit foamier the further up that you go. But you can see that this beer is a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, which is kind of what you'd expect. And if we sugar the beer up, you know, you can see that this one, from the lacing you get on the edge of the glass, you can see that this beer is pretty damn high in terms of its alcohol content. This is a beast. So when it comes to Imperial Stouts, two of the ways you can play with these, with this particular style, is that you can do a double mash, which is quite common. That gives you this really big sort of sticky mouthfeel that you get in some of them. Or you can do longer wort boils, and that gives you a bit of a more complex and kind of silky complex flavour and a sort of more silky mouthfeel. I think Nerd Brewing do a kind of combination of both, but I know Hannes loves Special B malt, so whenever you have a Nerd Brewing Imperial Stout, you're quite often going to get a beer that's kind of classic RIS in its premise, but it will have a wee bit of a more kind of modern twist to it, almost with all the adjuncts and things that he likes to put into them. Emperor's Brewery, as I say, I've not tried one of their own beers, so I can't really comment on that so far. But yeah, this one looks as if it's going to be pretty awesome. So you can see lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, as you would expect. If we shine the light through this one, it's got a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to it, but not not too much light getting through this one at all, to be honest with you. But it looks, I'm guessing this beer probably is pretty clear. Does it have wheat and stuff in it? Does it say? Yeah, malted wheat in this one. I know that Hannes does like to use a little bit of wheat in his beers as well, but not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. One or two big bubbles on the side of the glass at the bottom, and a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But you know, all in all, it looks pretty nice, this one, and pretty much what you would expect of the style. So yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things, mainly the different types of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EPC rating. Length of your wort boil can affect it, as well as can adjuncts and barrel aging. But when it comes to black beers like Imperial Stouts, it's very difficult to change the colour of these by adding adjuncts and things. I've only ever seen it done once with a beer from Estonia. It was Puasta that put beets in the thing, and that changed the colour of it to this kind of purple sort of thing. But yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. Let's have a wee look at the aroma and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Oh, that's ridiculous. I'm going to say straight away, this beer, I think this is going to potentially be one of the best ones I've had from Nerd. It just smells absolutely lovely. It feels a little bit nostalgic as well, because I haven't reviewed a Nerd beer in maybe about a year or something like this, so there is a little bit of that going on here, we will admit that with this review, but it smells so good. Pretty sure from the aroma and the kind of stickiness I'm getting out of that it's going to be double mash, but you still have, as I say, that classic Nerd Brewing RIS base, but this thing smells absolutely lovely. Yeah, so if you take the aroma in really deeply, it's even better. So let's just break this down then. The backbone of this beer, you have this lovely kind of you have this lovely, I would say, roasty toasty, well-fired black malty note coming out of this one. I've got a feeling there's a bit of carafa malt in this as well, but I think we've got special B and we've got carafa in this, but you get the roasty toasty well-fired black malt in this one. You can absolutely smell that, but then you're also getting this like really charred, well-fired bread crust coming out of the beer too, and it's that makes me think that there's a bit of carafa going on here. There's a little touch of woodiness within it as well. There's a good little bit of nuttiness coming out of this beer, generally speaking, but then above that, there's a mix of like, you know, really dense, like sludgy chocolate brownie in there. I do get a little element of rye bread as well, like a sweet rye bready kind of element. So yeah, rye bread, then that big chocolate brownie note. It smells very silky in a sense. There's wee hints of like vanilla in there, and you can smell the coconut. The coconut comes across as being a little bit more toasty, I would say, as well. But there's a lot of brown sugar in this one, and the chocolate. The chocolate for me is quite interesting because you do get that sort of 80-90% high percentage cocoa chocolate there, which gives you all these dark fruits and stuff like that. So definitely a bit of that going on, but at the same time I get a wee bit of a toasty, charred chocolatey note out of this one. You know, like kind of dark chocolate cocoa powder. It's a little bit like that. So there's a wee bit of that going on. So charred, dark chocolatey cocoa powder. And yeah, you do get a bit more of to further forward on the nose, I think you do get a little bit of a milky chocolatey note out of this one, you know, 60-70% cocoa chocolate coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way all of that goes together in this beer, I think, is also very nice. But yeah, aroma wise, this thing is absolutely beautiful. The brown sugars are great as well. I mean, you can smell the honey in this one, but I'm certainly getting a lot of like, you know, more leathery brown sugar out of this one. Not sure if that is maybe the specific nature of the honey, because I don't, you know, Nerd Brewing do like to use a long wort boil. Quite often they'll put the malt base in and leave it to kind of boil away overnight with these beers. But yeah, this one, you can smell that lovely smooth kind of leathery brown sugar in there. You can definitely get a bit of the honey, but there's a good little bit of treacle molasses as well, and definitely some sweeter caramel and some more toasty notes as well. But yeah, the complexity in this beer is quite obviously in the malt base. But this one smells particularly smooth and particularly leans towards that brown sugary note, which, you know, when you see how the beer is titled, makes sense, absolutely makes sense. Yeah, aroma wise, this is awesome. Gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, so on the the hoppy side of things, I think we've said everything we need about the malty side of the beer. It's kind of what you'd expect. You get a little bit of earthiness. There is a little bit of a kind of floral character to this one, and a wee bit of grassiness. You know, that's there for sure. I think it's probably Galena that's been used as the hop in this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's something else. I should look at the brew sheet and see what hops they're actually using this, but Galena is a very popular hop to use in American Imperial Stouts. But on the fruity side of things, this one's quite interesting. You get quite a little bit of fruitiness out of this beer. And I would say there's a good little bit of kind of raisiny character to it. There's some nice juicy plum in there as well. So yeah, raisins, juicy plums, but then yeah, you've got a bit of black currant and blackberry and fig and stuff like that in there as well. This beer, like I say, it maybe is about 1.5 years old or something, so I'm wondering if that's why we're getting a bit more fruitiness out of it. But yeah, the way it goes together, I think, the way it smells is very, very nice. It says on the side that I could leave this one until the 1st of October 2027, but yeah, I was too tempted to have a go at this just now. But yeah, aroma-wise, this is absolutely beautiful, and I think it's going to be very, very nice to drink as well. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, Brute Force 13.3% coconut and honey Imperial Stout from Nerd Brewing in Arlöv, Skåne, Sweden, in collaboration with Emperor's Brewery from, I forget the name of the town, but Ashby, near Ashby in Leicestershire in England. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn special. I'm going to say that. You know, since I've been here in Hong Kong, I've got to try Imperial Stouts from, you know, the Australian breweries, some of the New Zealand breweries, American, Canadian breweries as well. There's one or two of them in Hong Kong, but not so many. You'll see more of those on the channel going forward, right enough. But going back and trying something like this, I always used to say on the channel that the Nordic Imperial Stouts were very difficult to beat. And coming back and trying something like this, I think proves that point. This beer is just on a... We review a lot of good beer on the channel, but this one is definitely on a different level. This is pretty damn special. So if you come across a bottle of this, this is absolutely worth trying. First impression of it is that it's classic Nerd Brewing. It's got that big roasty toasty RIS backbone to it, but it's so thick and smooth, and it gives you all these big flavours. You know, it's definitely worth trying this one. Have a go at this beer for yourself and see what you think. But yeah, let's just break this beer down and describe it more in depth as we always do. We'll start in the middle third of the palate with this one. So yeah, the backbone of this beer, you have that lovely roasty toasty, well fired black malt backbone there, but a special bee, of course. So you can feel that there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your tongue, you absolutely get like a little bit of woodiness going further forward, but you can feel above that there's like there's a less harsh roasty toasty well fired bread crust in there, and I'm pretty sure that's likely to be some sort of carafa that's coming out there. The carafa is just a bit more of a smoother malt than the special bee in my mind. But then yeah, above that you get a layer of like German rye bread, like that sweet oily German rye bread. Then above that there's a more wholemeal brown bready layer, and then you start to get the more kind of cakey notes out of this one. So you've got a layer of this beer that feels like a more you've got a layer of this beer that feels like a more sort of wholemeal well, no, a more like a kind of muffin or like thick chocolate brownie there. It smells more like a kind of really thick, sticky chocolate brownie character in the aroma, but when you actually get the beer on your tongue, it is a little bit more kind of chocolate muffin like, I would say. I think, yeah, chocolate muffin or like chocolate sponge cake is probably a better way to describe that particular layer of the beer. But yeah, within that chocolate spongy, layer, there's definitely some kind of different nutty characters to this one. So yeah, roasty, toasty, nutty notes. Roasty, toasty, nutty notes in there. And you get the coconut. The coconut comes across as being a little bit charred and things. So the coconut definitely comes across as being roasty, toasty, and charred. But then above the above all of the that kind of cakey note there. Yeah, I think the chocolatey character is quite interesting. I often say sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, above the kind of chocolate muffiny layer, you can feel this the part of the chocolate there. So the more dark 80-90% cocoa chocolate is at the back. It's almost got a little bit of a charred character to it. But as you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you can feel that it mellows out and gives you a little bit more of like a 60-70% cocoa chocolate. So you can feel there is a little bit of a gradient almost. I don't know what the word to use for that is, but you can feel the chocolate just gradually gets sweeter as you move further forward in this one. And you do get a bit of dryness out of that as well into the aftertaste. So it's a very layered beer, this one, and this is quite often what we find with the Nerd Brewing beers. I can't really speak for the Emperor's Brewery stuff, as I said, because I haven't tried any of their own stuff. But yeah, above the kind of chocolatey layer, you start to get the brown sugary notes out of this one. And like I said, Nerd Brewing like to use a long wort boil, and you can feel that leathery brown sugary layer kind of forming the base of the brown sugars above the chocolate. And yeah, the other thing to talk about in this beer is the impact flavour. So when you take this thing in, you get a lot of the brown sugar. You can feel that big, thick, sweet brown sugary and silky chocolate character when you take the beer in. But then the roasty, toasty flavours I was talking about in the base, they come out a little bit more the further into the aftertaste. So this beer is actually quite sweet when you take it in, but more roasty and toasty and like RIS-like into the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, you've got that nice leathery brown sugary character forming the base in this beer. So you got that roasty, toasty, well fired base there that comes out. But yeah, you can feel the leathery brown sugar forming the base of the brown sugar there, but you've got that big circle in the middle of your palate, which is like a big treacly, oily molasses kind of character with this one. So above the leathery brown sugar, you get a bit of toastiness there. You get a little bit more of a sweet caramel then as you centre on the middle of your palate. You get that treacle molasses thing, and that obviously is kind of covering up the alcohol in this one. I think the sweetness of the honey isn't madly prominent in this one. It comes out more into the aftertaste. You can feel this sort of honeycomb type flavour there, and some of the coconut comes out as well. But yeah, this beer for me, I think when I compare it to some of the other Nerd ones, it feels a little bit more refined and a little bit more, it really does feel a little bit more refined and just a little bit more well-rounded, I think, than some of the other ones we've had. Not that any of them have been bad, of course, but yeah, this one just feels like it's on another level from the other Nerd stuff we've had in the past. But I think at that point we've covered everything that we need to say about the middle third of the palate, which is where most of the complexity in this beer lies. So yeah, let's go to the back third of the palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you've got a wee bit of the kind of rye bread in the base, the wholemeal brown bread, and then the kind of muffiny character in there. But then yeah, the base of the back third of your palate is that roasty, toasty, well-fired malt in there. It feels a little bit kind of drier, of course, more bitter flavours on the back of the palate. You've got some of the kind of more mellow, toasty bread crust in there from the carafa. Then yeah, you've got the rye bready base, which was a little bit lighter and more airy, the wholemeal brown bready character, then that sort of muffiny, that kind of muffiny and sort of brownie-like character in there. And then you can feel some of the more dry, char, chocolatey notes just creeping on top of that. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really, really very nice. And then above all of that, you start to get some of the yeasty characters out of the beer. So for me, the yeasty side of this beer, it's like a really dense rye bread, dry rye bread in the middle of the yeasty character. And as you move further out from that, it becomes more sweet, and then you've got a bit of a more rye bready bread crust around the edge of that. But all of that character just sits on top of the back third of the palate there. But definitely, I think rye bread is a good way to describe how the yeasty character kind of comes out in this one, and that lingers there on the top of that back third of the palate, like I said. But definitely back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, all in all, really, really nice how all of this stuff goes together actually. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things, then, as I've said, you know, Imperial Stouts are not the most hop forward style of beer. Back corners of the palate, you do have a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, there's a little touch of herbal character, and as you push further forward along the sides of your palate, you have a bit more of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing there, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So yeah, the way all of that pieces together, I think, is very, very nice. So gets a big thumbs up from me. The green component in these beers is important because it just gives you a bit more complexity of flavour. But let's go on to the front third of your palate then and round off the flavour description with the fruits. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get the kind of rye bready character in the base, the brown bread, and then a wee bit of the kind of cakey note, and then the base of that front third of your palate is more of a you get the roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. You get the kind of carafa notes in there, dense rye bready character, wholemeal bread, and then you get the chocolatey notes and the muffin and the chocolatey notes for you. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll the way out of the beer. So let's focus on that fruity part of the beer just now. So the fruity side of the beer for me is actually quite sharp in this one, and it's kind of interesting. So the fruity side of this beer, you've got that lovely sharp kind of raisiny note at the top of the, if you go to the back of that front third palate, at the top you've got this raisiny, almost, I want to say cherries in this case, like that raisiny cherry type note at the top. And as you go further down, you start to get more of a juicy kind of plummy note out of this one. So yeah, raisins, cherries, plum. Then as you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, in the centre of that front third of your tongue, it is quite figgy, like a big oily, juicy figgy note. And then yeah, you have this, as you go into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you've got like a little bit of blackcurrant in the base, but for me it's quite a sharp, juicy blackberry that comes out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, the fruity characters in this one I think are quite sharp and things, and I do wonder if that's down to the age of the beer, or maybe the adjuncts are playing a role as well. Maybe the honey that's in this one has helped bringing that out. But yeah, for me this one's quite interesting because the whole beer, generally speaking, as we say, it comes in quite sweet. The roasty, toasty RIS characters that you expect of a Nerd Brewing beer come out a wee bit later on. And then, yeah, you start to get the honey and the coconut lingering there into the aftertaste. It's a really interesting beer, this one, and it's nice to come back to Nerd after what feels like a good little while. But let's round off this review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, the mouthfeel of this beer is full-bodied, for sure. Yeah, I'd say pushing toward the top end of full body, but maybe not quite as thick as some of these Imperial pastry stouts and things that you're going to find. But in terms of an old school RIS, this is one of the thicker ones I think you're going to come across. Very sort of silky and very oily mouthfeel, I would say. There is a little bit of carbonation to this one, but otherwise the beer is very slick and very smooth. IBU wise, you know, this is a Nerd Brewing beer, so it's like 80, 90 IBUs. No doubt in my mind about that. Does it say on this one? 65. This is why you should always take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt, guys. I would have thought this was much higher in terms of its IBUs, but there you go. But yeah, the malt base, as we say, roasty and toasty in the base. You've got a bit of smoothness in the middle from the breads and the kind of chocolate spongy characters that I was talking about. Smoothness on the top from the chocolate and the kind of sweeter side of the beer. Like I say, it comes in very sweet, and this beer dries out and gives you a lot more bitterness into the aftertaste. But yeah, the fruity character in this one, I think, is very, very nice as well. Quite sharp actually, and quite oily and juicy. But all in all, a really, really interesting beer, this one, and I'd go as far as saying this is one of my favourites that I've had from Nerd Brewing over the last wee while. So yeah, definitely cool to return to these guys and to Emperor for the first time in what feels like a good long while. So yeah, I think we can, pardon me, leave it at that for this one. This was the Brute Force, a 13.3% Imperial Stout with honey and coconut in it, from Nerd Brewing in Arlöv, Skåne in Sweden, in collaboration with Emperor's Brewery from Ashby in Leicestershire in England. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both Nerd Brewing and Emperor's Brewery, and we will see about returning to these guys again quite soon. Check out my social media, check out the brewery's social media, and I'll catch you guys later. Ciao just now.